Hello?
Hello, is that Josh?
Yes.
Hello, this is Dave from Anaal Nathrakh.
How's it going?
Okay, thanks. Not too bad. You?
I'm doing great. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview.
That's okay, man. No problem.
Oh, awesome. Well, unfortunately, I haven't been able to listen to the new album all that much as I just received the promo last night, but I've been listening to it since last night, but I just gotta say, I'm absolutely enthralled with what you guys are doing this time around.
Oh, thanks, man. That's cool. And it's nice that it made an impression quickly.
Oh yes, I mean, ever since I discovered you guys, I've always found one thing I'm always able to latch to on an album that just makes me love it. And one thing I really noticed this time around, there seems to be more of a symphonic and atmospheric kind of vibe this time. Was that something that was a conscious effort, or did that just come in the studio?
It just came naturally. Pretty much everything we do is quite intuitive. To me, I hear a little bit of maybe even classical influence in it and stuff like that. But I said that to Mick and he didn't know what I was talking about. So that kind of shows you how much analysis is being done. But yeah, I think generally with music, if you want it to appear spontaneous and for it to make intuitive sense, the best way to do that is for that to be the way you make it. So we do everything as a matter of gut instinct rather than calculation.
And that's really the way to do it too, because you want to feel that fresh and inspired as well.
Yeah, I think that's fresh and inspired. I think those are good things as a listener. I mean, obviously we listen to lots of music ourselves as well as making it, and those things seem like good qualities in music, so that it's a good thing to try to include yourself, and overthinking things I think tends to detract from that. Obviously it's not a matter of just throwing out whatever shit comes to mind. There's a bit more analysis that goes on than that, but trying to keep that spontaneity there I think is an important part of music.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important thing, to not overthink it and just do what you think is going to work out rather than just write out the first thing that comes out and just hope for the best. Because you want to be proud of the music that you're making, but you also want to make sure that you still have an audience as well.
Of course, yeah, and possibly more than what you think will work. Do what feels right, because I think listening to music in general is a matter of feeling more than it is anything else, and it's feelings that you want put into music. If someone's got a really complicated idea about mathematics, that's too much thinking for music. That's not what music's for. It's for emotion and guts, and I think if you make it that way, that's what yields the best results in terms of how people can appreciate it afterwards.
So how would you describe that for the new album when it comes to those feelings that when you hear the new album?
To be perfectly honest, to me, we're a little close to it. It will always be the case when you make music, especially if, as we do, you record it and master it yourself and everything. We're intensely close to every single second of everything that's on all of our albums, and certainly the new album, freshest in our minds. So it's only now that we're starting to step back and to hear it in the same way that you might, or someone out there who buys a CD might. And it's been striking, speaking to other people, that how they seem to think there's quite a lot of savagery, that it's quite raw, this album, and we weren't quite as aware of that from the inside kind of thing. So for us, as much as anything else, it's a matter of people telling us what they think, and then we realising that they were right, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. I mean, that was one thing I listened to about halfway through my first listen last night, is it did have that really raw feeling behind it, but it still has that modern day sound that you guys have been approaching for the last few albums.
Yeah, I mean, as much as anything else, we've simply got better at the studio side of things. Mick's learned a lot of new tricks and so on, and obviously you're always trying to push, do better than you did before, go beyond what's been done, and also the inspirations and the idea that we had, they're things that we had in our heads recently, so they will hopefully translate into something that sounds quite modern and current and relevant. But like I say, that's the kind of thing that we can only start to appreciate now, because at the time we're just focused on making a complete chaotic racket.
So, well, in speaking of that, are the early day albums still enjoyable for you to play live and listen to as compared to what you're doing now?
Yeah, definitely. Although some of the, like a song structure might be a bit simplistic or something like that, the sort of the emotional rawness of it all and everything is still satisfying to us, and we still enjoy playing the old songs live and everything. So yeah, I think would like to think that we've brought them through time with us, so that they're not just left behind. They still feel quite satisfying now.
Yeah, I mean, that's also an important thing, too, because that does happen with bands sometimes where they either just play just the older material and they just put out an album just to have an excuse to tour, or a band just completely changed forms and they forget about what they've done in the past. But when I saw you guys last year at Maryland Death Fest, I mean, you guys did a pretty good collection of older and newer material, and that was very fantastic to see.
Oh, cool. Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed the selections. But yeah, I mean, someone spoke to me recently and said, how would you feel about doing like an anniversary show of what would it be, 15 years or something since the first thing we released. And I wasn't really into that idea because it seems to invalidate everything you've done since. I mean, obviously, some fans will always be around who'll say, with any band, they'll always say, yeah, the first album was the only thing worth listening to, but that's just a fact of life. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily the case. But you do see quite a lot of stuff, bands doing their, in inverted commas, classic album all the way through and that kind of thing. And that doesn't pay attention to, it doesn't give due respect to the things that you've done since. So yeah, we haven't done a 180. We haven't completely changed, but I do think we've evolved, and I would like to think that evolution was valid. That we've gone on to do some new and exciting things in more recent stuff. So it's having a combination of everything together is the only way to do it. I think it's the only way that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that as well. I mean, when you put on the newest album, which will be coming out October 28th, as compared to, say, the Necrocodex, I mean, you can listen to both of those and tell that they are from the same band, and then you can just tell from those two albums the evolution that you guys have done, but still maintaining that core idea of what you're going for.
I would like to think so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, a couple of albums ago, we did a sort of self cover. We did a song that was on one of our demos years and years ago, and that was, in a way, it was to illustrate that point. It was to show that the old song did sound slightly different to the newer stuff that it was put next to, but nonetheless it fit. It was of a piece with everything together. And I think as long as with everything you do, you try to simply do the best thing that you can and maintain integrity while you're doing it, that's how things will go. You'll be able to see an evolution. You're saying something in a new way and so on, but it's still recognisably you that's doing it. I mean, people will always disagree as to whether or not you've done it correctly, because that's such a subjective matter. Numerous people have accused us of not changing enough, and just as many people have accused us of changing too much. And I don't think you can keep that kind of stuff too close to your mind when you're trying to create something, because you can't please everyone. So you've got to make sure that you can stand behind it yourself. You've got to be your prime consumer yourself. But I like to think that we have pulled the trick off. We've maintained our identity, but pushed forwards at the same time. Hopefully, at least.
Well, I can definitely say as a fan that you guys have done that, and you've been able to maintain that so very well. I mean, from being able to keep that chaotic sound of the early days, and just like from the new album, being able to explore those symphonic and classical moments, some more atmospheric kind of feelings in areas, and just being able to explore all these sounds and maintain what you guys are all about. And I just think it's getting better and better with every album.
Ah, cool. I'm glad you think that. I mean, I think that. Personally, but I'm going to be biased, aren't I? But yeah, it's walking on a knife edge. It's a trick to pull off to be able to explore those new ideas and take things in different directions whilst maintaining the bedrock of your identity. So if you think that's what we've done, then that's cool. I'm pleased to hear that.
Oh, absolutely, no problem. So what inspired making the evolution in the sound like you guys have?
Everything and nothing. We, like I was saying before, we tend to try to keep things quite intuitive. So it's not like we sat down and went, right, how can we develop this, or how can we change that kind of thing. We've gone by gut instincts throughout. So as much as anything else, the evolution in the music, it charts just our evolution. What came naturally to us and what seemed satisfying, as that's what's dictated how we've evolved over time.
And yeah, I mean, I'm glad that it wasn't just like a conscious effort to, in a way, kind of disregard what you've done in the past, because you guys obviously haven't done that, but it is great to see that a band is, like yourselves, are able to explore all of these territories.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not saying you have to do it. Some bands don't, but they remain great. I've mentioned this in an interview before, but I was once sat near Gavin from V.I.T.R.I.O.L, and he was being interviewed, and the interviewer said to him, so what about this new album? And Gav said, "What new album? we haven't done a new album. We've only ever done one album, and then every couple of years we add some more songs to it." So it's a great line.
Oh yeah,
it's a perfectly good answer. But in their case, that suits. I mean, V.I.T.R.I.O.L are an institution; they're legends.
Absolutely.
And it works perfectly for them. But for us, we couldn't be satisfied just doing the same thing over and over. We have to evolve to keep things fresh for ourselves, and a byproduct of that is that it hopefully at least keeps things fresh for everyone else who listens to our stuff.
Oh, very much so. So how did you approach the lyrics this time around on the new album?
It's largely the same way as I have done for years. I keep notes constantly, all the time, just as life goes by, reacting to things that I've seen or things that I've heard and thought about, read, whatever it is. And that procession of life, and the fact that I have a bit of an eye for picking out particularly poignant or horrible parts of what I see in the world, I keep that list constantly, so that by default that kind of moves along as albums go by. And then when it comes to actually writing the lyrics, it's just drawing from that. It's like I suppose it's almost like a well, a sort of a mind well of things that have occurred to me since the last time I went through a similar exercise. So when it comes to record, I usually haven't heard the songs before, so that I haven't written out lyrics in a structured fashion before. But I have got snippets and I've got ideas and things like that. And in the studio, when we're recording the vocals, I sit down and shape the ideas around the music that Nick's written. And this time it had a lot to do with, there's quite a lot of current affairs and things. I think the world's going a bit crazy nowadays. Everything seems a bit more high stakes than it did a handful of years ago. And a lot of that is reflected in the lyrics on the album. You know, things like the conflict in Syria, that's been grinding on for a long time with little hope of resolution, and the way that the global stock markets have been in turmoil and things like that. There's a lot that have sort of metaphorical language for real events and so on and so forth. It's just what seemed to capture the mood at the time.
Yeah, I was definitely going to say, since the time of the last album, there's definitely been a lot of inspiration that you can write about that's been going on in the world lately, and I definitely hear that throughout the lyrics. I mean, you can definitely hear the pain of what's going on in the world right now.
I would hope so, to an extent, because that's largely what inspired it. And I do think that the world feels a bit more, now it feels a bit more like it did to me, or at least I remember it as a kid in the 80s. Everything was still a bit crazy then. There was always the slim possibility of a nuclear war kicking off or something insane happening like that. And things, they might not be quite there now, but the things seem a bit more elevated now than they did, say, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. And that has to inspire you, I think. There's an awful lot of creative output that's inspired by everything being wrong with the world. If I think back to the 80s, for example, like I just mentioned, if you think of stuff like Discharge starting out and changing the face of the harder end of guitar-based music forever. And if things feel a bit like that, then it's kind of unpleasant. And I mean, it's awful for a lot of people. But in terms of the musical output that's inspired by it, there's a lot of fuel for creativity there, I think.
Yeah, that is the one positive aspect of everything going wrong with the world right now. Is I imagine that there's probably enough material that you can write about until the band is done.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's more than enough inspiration, and new stuff keeps cropping up all the time. So. Yeah, I never run short of things to get angry about.
Oh yeah, and of course, since the time of the last album, you guys have been able to do more of an effort here in North America. How's that been for you guys, being able to actually do a bit of touring in North America?
It was really cool. It was a bit of a slog of an experience. We did in 2 weeks. I think we did something like 8,500 miles on the road. We went from Sacramento and LA right up through the center of the country and into Canada, and then down the east coast to Brooklyn, and we ended up in Baltimore. So we really got a whistle-stop tour, kind of, a whirlwind across the country. And it's been tremendous. I mean, Mick lives out in America. He lives in California. But for the rest of us, it's quite an exotic thing, really, to be able to go to America. And hopefully the opportunity will arise to go back over there. So yeah, we're really pleased to have had that experience.
Oh, very much so. And I loved seeing you guys at Maryland Death Fest. It was easily one of my favorite sets of the entire weekend. Although I will say, for the next time that you guys come out, I hope I don't have to go 16 and a half hours to be able to see you guys. Hopefully, closer to the Midwest, I'll be able to see you guys a little closer to home.
Right, okay, yeah. I mean, we do, on that tour, on the lead up to the Death Fest, we did go through like Kansas and so on, sort of up the center of America, but clearly you were in the wrong part of the country at the time.
Yeah, I'm a few states up from Kansas, but I already had my tickets booked for Maryland Death Fest before I found out you guys were going out on tour, and I couldn't afford to do both the Midwest and Maryland, so I just made the trek out there. But it was totally worth it to be able to see you guys with all of those people out there just being as happy as I was being able to see you guys.
Yeah, it was a really cool show to be able to do. I mean, we did play the Death Fest a few years before, and it was so much smaller back then. The main room for the concert venue, I think they use as a place to keep merchandise tables now. It's grown so much, and it was really cool to be able to go back and see how it's grown and see how successful it's been. It's something that in Europe there are quite a lot of quite big festivals, and there's kind of festival season throughout the summer. And I think North America misses out a little bit. I mean, things like the Death Fest are a taste of what's a little bit more common in Europe. So to see it prospering like that, and never know, maybe there'll be more cropping up and stuff. I think it's doing a good thing for the general music scene in America that festival is prospering.
Oh, very much so. So how is it for you being in comparison for doing shows in North America like Maryland Death Fest or doing that 2-week tour as compared to doing shows where you are at home?
Well, it's kind of the same, really, because we concentrate quite closely on actually playing the show. All of our thoughts are directed towards trying to make the show the best we can, and in that respect, it's largely the same as a show anywhere. I mean, we've been privileged. We've had the opportunity to play over shows thousands of miles apart and things, and we're always concentrating on doing our best. But the time that you spend around the show, obviously that changes immensely with where you are. And North America is such a varied place in itself. I mean, pretty much any climate you want to see or any kind of landscape you want to see or something like that, you can do it without leaving the country. It's such a huge place. So it would be difficult to put a finger on how it's different, because it's not the same as itself, if that makes any sense. But nonetheless, it was, generally speaking, just wonderful.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. When it comes to the live shows, was there any songs that you guys were trying to put into the set that was a bit challenging, or any songs that didn't end up working live, or were you guys able to make the songs work regardless?
For the most part, we've managed to pull off pretty much everything we've tried. Each song can be something of a challenge because they're not written with it in mind that we'll play them live. When you're making an album, you're trying to make the best album that you can, and compromising on that in order to make it easy to play live or something like that just isn't something we do. It's kind of like if a song is on an album and we think it would work live, okay, that's our task to try and pull it off. And yeah, I can't think of a song that we couldn't play because we literally couldn't play it. But some songs work better than others live. A couple of times we've tried older songs. I mean, there's a song from way back called Satanachrist that we did live a few times, and it seemed to go down well with fans. You know, it's a song that they like. I enjoyed hearing it. But it wasn't, because it's not as aggressive a song as some of the other ones we played. The more aggressive ones seem to have more punch to actually perform live, and they seem to lend themselves to the live environment, you know, stage divers and mosh pits and all that kind of thing a bit better. So I think there's probably a slight more emphasis on more in your face sorts of songs because they work well live. But we've managed to play pretty much what we wanted to.
Well, I'm glad to hear that too. And again, my only reference is still Maryland Death Fest, because when I try to look up live videos on YouTube, they're always just such terrible quality. I want to be able to experience it live, so I just use Maryland Death Fest for reference. But it does sound like you guys really have gotten that down to be able to make sure that the songs are working right, making sure everything's synced up the way that it should be, and it's just a very professional sound that comes out.
Yeah, I mean, we had to put quite some thought into how to make such chaotic music a coherent thing that you could actually play live, but hopefully we pulled that off. I mean, I share your feelings about live videos. I absolutely hate watching them myself. Not necessarily because of the sound, but because it's very much stripped of the atmosphere, I think. I think there's something about being there at a show that makes it, you know, this visceral living experience that you just can't get on a video. I don't blame people for putting videos on YouTube or whatever. You know, it's normal. That's what people do nowadays. But I definitely think such things are best experienced in person. It's a much more impactful and vital experience if you're really there.
Yeah, and that's why I was so fortunate to be able to see you guys after being a fan for such a long time, because I wanted to be able to witness how it was going to sound live. Was it going to be more chaotic? Was it going to be more stripped down? But I noticed it sounded just so tight and professional, which I really appreciated with all the chaos that you guys bring out.
Cool. I'm glad you thought that. Thanks. It's probably by luck as much as anything else, but yeah, I'm glad it worked that well.
Oh, very much so. So, what's the plans for the rest of 2016 into 2017?
Obviously, the album will come out in a few weeks' time. We've got some shows in Europe around the time of the album. We're not long. A couple of weeks ago, we were in Japan, and then at the weekend just gone, we were in Germany and Austria and the Czech Republic, and then we've got a few weeks, and then around when the album comes out, we got about 2 weeks of doing various shows in Europe, and then after that, we're not sure. We've been in talks for some shows here, some shows there, that kind of thing. But there's no like big touring schedule worked out yet. But that's the next thing on the plan, on the agenda, to try and sort that out. So hopefully we'll be touring around spring next year, and we'll just see what happens.
Oh, very cool. One last note about the album. The promo I received had a couple cover tracks on it as well. Where did those come from?
Well, they're bonus tracks on the album. Yeah. Both of them separately. They were tracks that we did for magazines. The specials song was Decibel magazine from the States, and they got in touch with us, and they were doing a flexi disc series, various different bands choosing a cover song, and we thought, yeah, that'd be cool. And we wanted to pick a song that would be a bit unexpected. You know, probably most people who would listen to us may not even know who the specials are, but we thought it was quite compatible with our style, and we thought it would work well. And we're really pleased with the results. And the Iron Maiden song, similarly, a magazine in the UK here, just at the time when we were recording this album, got in touch and asked us if we do it. And yeah, we did, and we were pleased with the results. But because they were both just to be given away with magazines kind of thing, a lot of people wouldn't have heard them. So we thought that sounds perfect for bonus tracks for this album. You know, let everyone who wants to hear them give them the opportunity, and it's something a little bit different.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that too, because, you know, of course, those songs sound nothing like what you guys do, but when you cover those songs, you definitely make them your own.
Ah, cool. I'm glad you think that. Obviously, that's the aim. It should sound like the original in a kind of way, but it should sound like the band who's playing the cover. So that's what you're going for. So yeah, if you think we pulled it off, then good.
Absolutely.
Oh shit. My next interview guy's calling me.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, I was just about to wrap it up here. Once again, thank you for taking the time to do this interview, and if there's anything else you'd like to mention before we're done, please feel free to do so.
I've got no particular axe to grind. Just thank you for paying attention and caring enough to do it, and the same goes out to people who consume the interview in whatever way that they do, but that's all I've got.